This was a pretty tricky one. I think most of us racing have the most experience at Zwartkops. So personally, it wasn't the track that was the intimidating factor, but instead trusting the car again. Either way, it was good to be able to get back into the driver's seat and somehow manage to come home with a P2, which for me was the career best finish of the season so far. This is obviously despite starting on pole in Kyalami for both race 1 and race 2 before the brake failure and DNF occurred. A little bit more on this. It was actually the second failure of the day, with Hannes Visser befalling the same fate as me, but just in race 1. By the time we apply pressure onto the brake pedal of the GR Corolla, we are doing around 200 kilometers an hour, so it was a pretty scary scenario to be in. Despite the upgraded system to better cope with the harsh conditions of racing, no race spec rear pads were available at the time, but the good news is all of this has been remedied, and Sean completed 15 plus laps of shakedown at Zwartkops before we raced there with no faults to report. Myself and Hannes actually got the call a few days before round 3 to confirm we'd be getting back behind the wheel, and it came with much excitement mixed with a little bit of apprehension. And this is because we'd have to get back into the car and learn how to wait until the very last moment to hit the anchors before a corner. It takes a significant level of trust in a race car, and this proved the case because in the first few practice sessions, which were more of exploratory laps, it came down to figuring out if there was any setup that had to be adjusted on the car, and the lap times tell that story. I don't think either of us were completely confident just yet, but our little blood-pumping tussle likely reignited some of that excitement we had grown so fond of with these cars in the course of the first few rounds of the championship. Up next though is Aldo Scribante in Port Elizabeth at the end of June, and this really is a track I have limited experience on, but hopefully the collective grid will be able to close the gap to the interval, so stay tuned.